Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Winter. I'm your host today at Logistics Executive TV. And don't forget to look at Logistics Executive TV anytime you want to pick up any of our vodcasts. Today, I'm extremely honored. I'm in awe, in fact, because I have a living legend of the supply chain with me. And it's Scott Luton from Supply Chain Now, all the way over there in Atlanta. Hey, Scott.
Hey, good morning, Kim. How you doing? You're way too kind with your comments, but great to be with you.
Yeah, thanks very much. And Scott, I just want to let you know that the team here said, because you're such a legend, I better dress appropriately. So I've come up with something a little bit tropical. I'm not too sure what the weather's like there, but in honor of you guys. Hey, Scott, so Supply Chain Now, I've been an addict. You guys rule the airwaves and the video waves and the podcast waves around supply chain, and truly in awe of what you guys do. And today we're going to explore a bit of background on Supply Chain Now, what some of the big issues are in supply chain, and get it from the man who's usually on the other side, who's done several hundred, if not thousands of interviews, which I'm addicted to. So look, glad you could join us. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and how Supply Chain Now came about?
Absolutely. So born and raised in Aiken, South Carolina. Went into the Air Force right out of high school. In fact, I called the recruiter instead of the other way around. Got a scholarship. Got a scholarship to the University of South Carolina, even though I was a lifelong Clemson fan. Got out of the Air Force in 2002, active duty, and really had no idea what I wanted to do and what I was qualified to do, frankly. So eventually, I made it into the manufacturing industry a couple years later, and really fell in love with that, with the camaraderie and the sense to mission and the production environment that is so core to the manufacturing industry. And really, that started about a roughly 15-year or so journey, really serving mainly the manufacturing industry. Worked for a couple manufacturers, including a metal stamper, where I lost a couple of my 9 lives there, but really loved the people. Loved the environment, really enjoyed the industry. And, the way I look at it, and the way I think a lot of folks are looking at it, is when you think of end-to-end global supply chain, you got different sectors and different nodes that make that up. And of course, nothing happens without manufacturing, just like nothing happens without, transportation, logistics, or anything else these days. So loved that industry, and that really set the table for, Supply Chain Now.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, you're based in Atlanta, where I've been a number of times, and South Carolina, a fantastic part of the world. And Atlanta really is a major logistics and supply chain hub for the US. So at what point did the idea of Supply Chain Now, which has been a highly successful concept, which is really, really running hot now in a number of products and a number of services that you guys provide, which I'll touch on today. But where did the idea of coming up with something like Supply Chain Now? Because it really is a unique media platform.
Well, Kim, really appreciate your comments, and, really enjoy all the kindred spirits that we have, and then shared passion for the industry. And that's what is at the core of Supply Chain Now. Back in, over 10 years ago, I started serving as a volunteer leader with the Global Supply Chain Association, and we served a number of smaller chapters that didn't have the resources and in some cases the leadership bandwidth to hold monthly dinner meetings where they could share best practices and gain certification maintenance points and stuff like that. So we came up with the idea, it wasn't terribly unique, of a monthly webinar series, and we led that. Really enjoyed doing that. Got a lot of feedback, made it easy and convenient. This is long before everything became remote, right? But based on those experiences, and based on what we saw the need, and in a weird way, how the industry needed a voice, because in those webinar sessions, that Q&A, that 10, 15, 20 minutes of Q&A of each webinar, that's what I thought was the secret sauce, where we heard from the audience. And so we conducted our first podcast in May 2017, and that changed everything. And that's, 450 podcasts later, live streams, of course, still webinars, events, you name it, but all focused on really giving a voice to the global supply chain industry that has long been, unrecognized, underappreciated.
Yeah.
But now, here in 2020, as you know, not only does supply chain have an established seat at the table, perhaps unlike ever before, but consumers are starting to connect the dots and have been, especially with the rise of e-commerce, about why supply chain is so important and how can we get our items sometimes same day, sometimes in 2 hours. And of course, none of that happens without the great people and the technology that makes up supply chain.
Awesome. And I guess, forever, most of us have just flopped into supply chain as you have and as I did in New Zealand in the early days, and setting up a trucking company and moving on from there. And many decades later, I'm still in it and at it. But I guess what I'm hearing you telling me is you were passionate about it, you found it interesting, and so you carried on. The secret sauce of any good business, yeah?
Absolutely. And, again, very, in my experience and in my view, I really enjoyed that military environment where there was such a sense of mission and such a sense of esprit de corps. There was a lot of diversity, a lot of creative problem solving, that the military is known for. And you can find so much of that in global supply chain, right? Because whatever it takes, the job's got to get done. Yeah. That means bridging technical barriers. That means bridging cultural barriers, which I really love about global supply chain. It means, working together to get good parts on time, at the right price, the whole shebang. And that's a very attractive element of supply chain that I hope continues to lure people into the industry.
Well, sure as hell you guys are, and gals, because I know you got a real eclectic mix of commentators and interviewers on your crew. But you guys really are bringing the reputation and the profile of supply chain and all things supply chain and logistics right the way up. So damn well done. Hey, I want to drill right into it in the style that you do your interviewing as well, by the way. So I've learned so much from you guys and the podcasts we've been doing. So thanks for that. But let's just talk about some of the most interesting conversations that you come to top of mind, because I've heard some crackers. And usually here when I get you live, it's about 3 or 4 in the morning. So that keeps me awake at night. But talk to me about some of the interesting stuff that that really crops up in your mind, and some of the conversations you've had.
So I love that question, and we get that question a lot. And when you publish a conversation each day that you really love, it's tough to really boil it down. Mm. But as I was doing my homework for this for our conversation here today, I picked a couple. I think here recently we had the great honor of interviewing Consul General Nadia Theodore, who, did you hear that one?
Yeah.
So she's a Canadian diplomat, kind of the leader of the Canadian mission in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And to hear her talk about, first off, savvy global business leader. I mean, we could have spoken for hours. I was taking copious notes and learning from her. But one of the things that really stood out in my mind that I really loved is how she shared about how her father walked her through the produce section when she was growing up, and he would regularly ask her, do you know what this is? Do you know where it's from? And do you know where this is from? And if that's not a wonderful, tangible lesson of global supply chain that any child can really start to pick up at an early age, that's a beautiful thing. I really appreciated her sharing that with us. Because I think a big challenge that we all have as ambassadors of the industry is to bridge that awareness gap. And we've started to see some good signs here in recent years. But I've spent time in elementary schools, really talking with 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, young children, and really identifying, what same things I didn't know as a kid. And we've got to, if we expect top talent to come into the industry, we've got to make sure we tackle that awareness gap at an early age. So that interview sticks out. Land O'Lakes Chief Supply Chain Officer Yanni Dewberry was an awesome interview. Yep. He, as you probably know, he's a keynote in a lot of different places. We had a chance to sit down with him and spend an hour, and he talked about this notion of decisive adaptability. And you hear plenty about agile and resiliency and all the, you pick the buzzword, but when it gets down to it, it's all about adapting, being able to be as flexible as possible while making good decisions as quickly as possible. And really enjoyed him talking about how they've incorporated that at Land O'Lakes.
Yeah, good. And I heard you. I heard your discussion with Rick Blaschen. I know Rick. I met him in Philadelphia actually for a CSCMP conference. Wow, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. Big conference, and in those days, there was a lot of partying involved as well, as I recall it.
I bet. Well, work hard, play hard in supply chain, right? But yeah, here, Rick. I'd spoken to him previously, and of course, seen him just like you and thousands of other folks at conferences and whatnot. But really, just be able to sit down and put the spotlight on him and hear his passion for this industry firsthand, that certainly has been a recent highlight. And then one other I'd love to share with you is Kelly Schaub is VP of HR at a really forward-thinking manufacturer called Proterra. And one of the big things they do at Proterra is make like green buses and green bus fleets. And, I love sitting down with HR leaders because speaking of being underrepresented, that profession needs more spotlight too. But one of the things that she shared with us, I really appreciated, is how she viewed it as her mission and a key responsibility she had. And when she sits down with other senior leaders of the organization, and you got those tough decisions you've got to make as the economy goes up and as it goes down, is she conveys the story of the people and the families behind the numbers. And I thought we all can learn a lesson from that. It's not, we should all share that burden of communicating those stories, because it's not just about numbers that make up this industry, so I really enjoyed her perspective in that episode.
Yeah, keep them coming. I mean, for our audience, going out to our audience that may not have heard of supply chain now, I'm sure people are going to pick it up and get into a whole range of your interviews. You've got another couple of products. So you've got supply chain now. You guys are pumping out an interview every day, always high quality, always high of interest. Then you've got, what have we got? We've got supply chain is boring, which
right.
is automatically gets your attention. And never boring, but that's got its own angle as well. And you got Greg White as well with Tequila Sunrise, and Tequila Sunrise, right?
So, Supply Chain is Born is led by a dear friend, Chris Barnes. I've known him. He was one of the first folks I met in Atlanta forever ago. He's got such a wonderful and unique view and angle on that show, Supply Chain is Born, which, as you point out, is aptly named to get people's attention. So that's been a really neat thing to watch kind of blossom. And watch Chris's passion at it. And then Greg White, who's typically my partner in crime in most of the live streams and webinar podcasts that we do, it's long overdue, because he's got the personality and the expertise in that niche behind Tequila Sunrise. So he's really focused on supply chain tech, entrepreneurialism, M&A activity, ventures, deal making, the whole shebang. And he can talk. He's got so much background in that, and he's got so much to share. So that Tequila Sunrise has been a neat thing to watch as well. Yeah. Proud of our veteran voices, which is part of our give back. Giving other veterans a chance to share and to be heard. That's really important to us. And then another little project is This Week in Business History, which is really, I'm a big history nerd, Kim, and it gives me a chance to do some research and share, a couple of did you knows each week. So those are some of our current vehicles, and we've got a few others, but and a few others in the Skunk Works that we're really excited about releasing soon.
Sure. Now, I listened to your latest veterans one this week, and the gentleman who's an HR background and massive. I've spread out with about 30 people from that link, because right now, with a lot of people are going through pretty tough times, his truths are ultimate truths about how to actually get out there, reach out and get your ass into gear and go and look for the right role with the right person, and using LinkedIn to do that.
Vince, great Kim, great. I agree with you completely. Vince, who was the speaker guest of that last episode, he shared a lot of really neat stuff. One thing in particular, I think we can all learn from, especially if you're in transition, is, and I'm bad about it. I use this phrase, pick your brain. I've used it for years. And Vince really made a point of, don't use that. That's a catch-all. If you're in transition in particular and are reaching out and do like a working interview or benchmarking interview or leaning on your network, hey, get really specific, because a lot of those folks get emails and phone calls from a wide variety of people that are all very general. Yep. But if you get really specific, you'll have a better chance of getting some time from the folks you need to find your next opportunity.
Yeah, right. Hey, let's jump right into something out of the blue for you. What are the biggest lessons that you've learned since starting Supply Chain Now? What really stands out as 3 or 4 things that have come to you that you've picked up? We're all learners. You're spreading the faith and the truth and the religion of sharing information and learning in supply chain. What have you picked up? What things have really struck you?
The biggest lesson learned is how little I know, Kim, quite frankly. And
the big club we're in.
So, the first thing that comes to mind is the power of reverse mentoring. You can learn from anybody, and it's really important to embrace that. But this notion of reverse mentoring that we all probably have heard about, we've experienced that firsthand. We had our first couple of interns this past summer, Genoa and Devin, and learned so much from those 2 talented individuals. And those are just 2 of the members of the younger generations that we've had a good fortune to learn from in recent years. So that really stands out. This is going to sound really cliche, but expect the unexpected. I'm not sure if you're a Big Brother fan from CBS. That's the mantra of that show that's 20 seasons deep. But 2020 has really delivered that and has really spiked the football on that point. And so, what does that mean for supply chain? What does that cliche mean for that very real cliche mean for supply chain? Well, a lot of organizations undoubtedly are going to be doubling down on scenario and contingency planning in the months to come to really identify what's in that blind spot. We all have it. Every organization, every business leader has it. The better we can get at identifying it and being more prepared for the what ifs. I mean, that certainly has been a big lesson learned for 2020.
Okay. So, I hear what you're saying in terms of just picking up and really picking up the learnings from other people. In regards to lessons learned during the COVID period, I mean, this has been the year to forget in many ways, but, and in full credit to everybody who's really struggling out there in supply chain. And let me tell you, anybody on our network that hasn't been listening to Supply Chain Now, get in amongst it, because you'll get so much energy from what you hear from yourself and Greg and Vince and the others. It's really good stuff. But if you talk about what the silver linings are, perhaps from this COVID period, what have you observed and what stories have come to the fore through your platform during this pretty tragic period in many ways?
Yeah, there's going to be so many different silver linings that are lessons learned from this really challenging year. And I try to dwell on more of that than a lot of the despair and the stress that we all have. But one of those silver linings, what I believe, is an enhanced value on an emphasis on empathy. And we can all point to just these types of conversations right here where, the dogs barks in the background or the kid tumbles in or you spill a full thing of coffee on your desk middle of the team call. It seems like there's a lot more understanding when it comes to that, as there probably always should have been. And that's just a small example. That's kind of a humorous example. I think what I've seen is a lot of business leaders get really serious about being more empathetic about the individual journeys we're all on, especially during a challenging year like 2020. I think what also comes to mind and what I've really seen, I've really appreciated, is organizations and leaders really deliberately being a force for good, right? And even if there's a business cost, even if it expends resources, they're really getting focused on doing good. And our Logistics with Purpose series really spotlights that. It's one of our first series we do in conjunction with Enrique Alvarez over at Vector Global Logistics. And, he and his organization are out to change the world, and they love to spotlight organizations that are doing the same. Sure. So within that, and so that's good news that really needs to be heard. I mean, who has too much good news in a year like 2020? Not many folks, right?
Dead right.
So
yeah,
they're spotlighting companies that take care of global coffee farmers that have been taken advantage of for hundreds of years, right? Making sure they have a seat at the table and they can make a healthy living. Their Books to Africa is a big mission they support, and teaching someone to fish rather than providing fish, so it's more sustainable. Mm-hmm. So a lot of folks, when they hear programs like books, like sending books places, they think of a library, they think of maybe kids' books, but what about teaching people skills, engineering skills, project management skills, business skills, that will help the countries throughout Africa do more and grow and do so in a sustainable fashion. I think one last example of that program and about really folks embracing the need to do good is Jasmine with Gooder, an organization called Gooder, Jasmine Crow with Gooder, Goodr. She's on a mission to reduce all the food waste that we have here in the States. I mean, I think other parts of the world are much more savvy and are further down the road in terms of, really reducing waste and having a system in place that helps do that. But we've got a huge challenge here in the States that we've got to tackle, especially when folks go without, and that just can't happen. As she likes to say, food shortage and not to be too dramatic, but starvation is really a logistics problem. Mm. And that's such a great way of putting it. And it really shows that we can do something. If we can do something about anything, we could do something about logistics. And so those are some examples of folks that are really doing some good things in a challenging year like 2020.
Yeah, I think you're bringing some great stories to light and shining the spotlight on a lot of what problems are occurring, and supply chain's usually right in the middle of all of that. And I think you're doing a fantastic job of bringing that into frame and into context. I mean, I was reading the Sydney Morning Herald the other day that 1 in 6 Australian children heading to either in poverty or living in poverty in a tier 1, first class country, first world country. And I'm sure in the US, when we're hearing about the tens of millions of kids and families that are really struggling there. So well done for bringing those stories to light. Hey, I know you've got a big gig coming up and very shortly, and you've got a new product launch coming up, which we won't talk about today. We'll steal your thunder. But just to wrap up, Scott, what's happening for supply chain now moving into the future? What are your aspirations? What are your designs? Where are you planning on taking what has been a fantastically successful platform so far? What's happening next?
Kim, I wish I could start every morning with a conversation with you. You really make someone feel good. But hey, we're really excited. Selfishly, I love meeting people and business leaders like you across the globe that all have a passion for global supply chain, especially the people. I mean, that's such a rewarding aspect of this journey. But yeah, new series, new shows, new partnerships, new subject matter. Really wanting to, in a very robust manner, provide a voice for an industry that's been overlooked for so long. New partnerships, new team members. Jamin, who leads our Logistics and Beyond series, he's really a logistics and transportation expert. And to see the amount of expertise but positivity he brings, that's the kind of folks you want to partner with and help facilitate his conversations he brings to the table. But what will be the same is the level of passion and a sense of mission of what we do. I mean, that's really what at our core has helped identify where, what we should do and how we should do it. But what I'm hoping we can do in the greater, regardless of all these things will lead to us doing one thing, which is broaden the tent, right? really making sure folks understand what supply chain is, all the different ways that it touches global society, and know that there's something for everybody in end-to-end supply chain. And that's one of the biggest parts of our mission. And we're really excited about the weeks and months ahead based on the successes we've had thus far, which again is driven by the perspective and the expertise and the stories of folks across global supply chain.
Well, I guess you're in the right place if you want to know about legends of media. I think Ted Turner started in Atlanta with CNN, didn't he? The cable network, cable news network. You got a great model to follow there. But look, I know you got to go, and I really do appreciate the valuable time that you've given up for us. Congratulations to you and your team. It's an awesome thing that you're doing. You've thrown an entirely new light on supply chain. It's not just something that we are adding value. You've created a new paradigm, and more kudos to you guys. Congratulations. Final word from you given that you are the media giant, the supply chain, any final words of encouragement from you, and I'll hand over to you.
Kim, hey, thanks so much. I really appreciate your perspective and all your kind comments. But hey, the final word is always this, and this is something we take very seriously, especially when it can be unpopular, it can be uncomfortable, but it's got to happen. And that's how we challenge our audience, we challenge our team. Hey, we've got to be the change that's needed. And regardless if it's the easy change where you're looking for efficiencies or waste, or finding the right people or developing your team, or tackling challenges, or more importantly, and much more difficult to do is being the change that's needed in some of our systemic issues and challenges that we've had for far too long, that we're starting to hopefully make some progress with. And I look at, especially at, some of our racial challenges we have here in the States. So that's where we've got to take the responsibility very seriously, put it in a headlock, and make something happen. And it's all about being the change that's needed.
Hey, great, Scott. Really humbled to have been able to interview the man that does all the interviews. Really enjoyed it. Hugely entertaining and great. Really look forward to hearing more of Supply Chain Now. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks so much, Kim. Have a great week.
All the best. You too.